If you want a four-wheel drive ute that's big, spacious and comfortable, maybe you've outgrown the typical Australian four-wheel drive ute, you're probably looking at one of these, a Ram 1500. We know these Rams are great at towing. However, we've had a few questions asking about whether they're any good off-road, or should they just be sticking to the bitumen. Technically speaking, they have decent sized tyres, they've got a bit of ground clearance and a proper four-wheel drive system, so they should be good off-road, but we're here today to find out exactly how good they are. But we're not going to stop there. After doing some four-wheel drive tracks out in the bush, we're going to get on the road, see how comfortable this thing is, especially with the 3-litre EcoDiesel under the bonnet. And then we're going to strap a caravan on the back and see what it's like at towing and see how much fuel it uses. And of course, we're going to do a full tour of the interior. This is a Laramie spec and there's a lot going on. It's a big interior as well. So we've got a lot to get through. Let's hit the road. This Ram 1500 Laramie EcoDiesel has a before on-roads asking price of $109,950, making it $5,000 more expensive than the Hemi-powered Ram Laramie. Entry-level express specification is petrol only, which makes this diesel the most expensive 1500 in the range. There's a 3-litre turbo diesel V6 under the bonnet, which is also used in the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Those numbers are slightly different to the Jeep because this engine is tuned for the American market. For reference's sake, that's 112 less kilowatts compared to the Hemi V8 and 13 Newton meters more twist. However, peak torque does come on much lower in the rev range. Naturally, this diesel-powered Ram is a more frugal operator, but the gap isn't as big as you might think. While the petrol Ram has a claimed fuel consumption of 12.2 litres per 100, this diesel Ram has a figure of 11.9. Neither are exactly what you'd call frugal, but this is a big rig after all. How big? I'm talking over 5.8 metres long and more than 2.6 tonnes worth of curb weight. Being top spec, Laramie does bring a lot of chrome bling on the outside, including those shiny 20-inch alloy wheels, but there are no side steps. And the interior is loaded up as well. Let's have a look. If you're a big fan of storage and space in your four-wheel drive ute, this Ram 1500 is pretty untouchable. It's a bigger car overall, and you kind of get the sense of how big it is by looking at this center console. The width of it is huge, and you've got a stack of storage there. There's a top layer, and then a big space underneath. Storage continues through here. There's a cool spot for your smartphone, slotting in there. Space for your wallet and other stuff there. Even more cup holders down in the doors, and there's just little nooks and crannies everywhere to store your stuff. Even twin glove boxes, which is pretty cool. You have to remember though, that's where the steering wheel once was. These do get converted to right-hand drive in Australia, and that conversion is actually really good overall. The only major quirk that I find with it is the foot brake, which is down on this side. It's in a slightly awkward position, right up against the driver's door here. There is nice soft touch materials around the place, and this conversion feels well put together. Everything is solid to the touch. It doesn't feel like a backyard hack job whatsoever. There is tilt adjustment on the steering wheel, a little bit fiddly to get to, but no reach. But you do have adjustable foot pedals, which I reckon is pretty awesome. Forgive me for continuing on, but there is a lot to cover in this Ram 1500, especially in the Laramie spec. This is kind of like a 200 series Sahara competitor in terms of what it's got. You've got heated and fan-cooled seats here, heated steering wheel. This is an 8.4-inch infotainment unit. That's the latest Uconnect system. So you've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, digital radio. Pretty much everything is covered there, and it's a good system that's easy to use. Seats, obviously they're leather, but both sides are electrically adjustable and they're big and comfortable, as you would expect in this kind of car. While up front there is a couple of USB points and a 12-volt socket, you've only got the one 12-volt in the back here, but you do have heated seats and air vents, so this is still pretty well spec'd in the back. And the big thing to take away is space. Look at my legroom here, look at my headroom, even with the sunroof, tow room. This thing is spacious and it's really comfortable. A couple of cup holders there if you want them, and there's a couple more down the bottom. One of my favorite things about the interior of this Ram, however, great for those long drives on the road, is this back electric window. It's operated from up the front there, and it's just nice to keep the air circulating in the cabin. If you've got no passengers in the second row and you need a bit of extra storage space in this cab, maybe you've got a working vehicle mostly, these stadium folding seats are awesome. Got these trays here that open up, maybe they're for rifles and whatnot, but it also folds down to be a really handy storage platform. Look at all that space. This Ram does have a soft tonneau cover fitted to it, which can be secured in this folded position here, which means you can load the thing up and not have to take that tonneau off completely, but fold it back down, and it does make the tub kind of secure. But if you do want more space, you can opt for the cheaper Express variant of the Ram, and that takes you to a bigger tub at expense of the cab. But still, this is a very big tub. That's over 1700 mil long and just shy of 1700 mil wide. There's 4 tie down points there, no 12 volt power, but you do get a really good spray on tub liner, which I like. It's very durable and quite grippy as well. But what about off-roading with the Ram? We found some nice dirt roads in the bush to see how it stands up. This Ram is never going to be something like a hardcore four-wheel drive, like a rock crawler or anything like that. It's simply too big and probably too heavy to do those sorts of things. This weighs around 400 to 500 kilos more than most other dual cab utes, which is a fairly significant amount. Obviously, it's a lot longer as well, so your turning circle's reduced, your ramp over is reduced, your general clearance is a little bit reduced as well. But keeping in mind all those things, it's actually good off-road, this big Ram. Low range is quite good. Remember, this is an 8-speed automatic gearbox, so low range first gear does reduce quite well. And you've got a lot of torque available from this 3-litre V6, and it's all quite well controlled. These tyres, they're mostly a highway terrain, and they're on a 20-inch wheel, which is quite blingy, but don't forget, it is a 33-inch diameter, so you've got decent clearance from these tyres, and that's a bigger tyre than most other four-wheel drives on the market. It's about the same size as a Ranger Raptor, in fact. And a tyre of that size does give a fair amount of clearance. And of course, if you want to modify this thing, 33-inch tyre means you can fit almost, or maybe even a 35-inch tyre without breaking any rules. And that's pretty cool. A lot of guys will love that. And it will make it better off-road. It will give you a bit more clearance and all that sort of thing. But general four-wheel driving, a few tricky sections here and there, this thing is a lot better than most would think. You're probably not going out on a limb to say that the majority of Rams will spend most of their time on the blacktop. And with that in mind, that's where we're headed next. With a 3-litre V6 diesel under the bonnet, the Ram does feel much different to one with a 5.7-litre Hemi. It's lost that muscliness to it, that rumble and that growl. Instead, it's replaced by what is quite a smooth diesel engine. Definitely lacking a little bit in power, obviously, in comparison to that Hemi, but on its own, this one does get along reasonably well. For comparison's sake, it is a little bit down on power and torque compared to, say, an Amarok V6 in its highest state of tune, or a Mercedes X-Class V6 diesel, which isn't going to be around for much longer, or it's already dead. However, this is a much bigger car, so you do lose that feeling of outright acceleration that something like a V6 Amarok, especially in that 580 tune, has. This doesn't feel down on power, however, it just doesn't feel fast like those other utes do. What it's definitely got more of than other utes is size, and in particular, wheelbase. And that brings a big benefit, I think, to a ute that does have a fair payload and a big towing capacity. You can feel that the suspension is still fairly firm. It's got that typical ute jiggle that most have. It's not an outright smooth car like a passenger car or something like that, an SUV. However, the wheelbase does help to iron out a lot of that. This does feel very comfortable to drive. It's easy to steer. You're very comfortable behind the wheel here. Visibility is quite good as well. And just because you've got so much space to sort of get comfortable, this thing is an epic mile eater. I couldn't think of many other cars that I'd prefer to spend bulk hours behind the wheel in. Maybe a Nissan Patrol Y62, maybe a Land Cruiser 200 series. They're all pretty similar, but this has that little bit extra space, that bit extra storage, that, I guess, Americanness that no other ute really has. The V6 diesel tends to sit around that 2000 RPM mark, which is its happy place in terms of peak torque. Although if you do ask it, plant the pedal a little bit, the gearbox reacts and it's actually a happy revving engine. It gets up to 3,000, 3,500 RPM quite easily, and it's happy to do so. Special mention to the 8-speed gearbox, automatic with a torque converter. it's a good operator. Keeps revs nice and low when you need it, but is quick to respond at the same time. That plays that nice balancing act, I think. So although this Ram isn't as endearing or as enjoyable as the 5.7 litre Hemi, it's still quite good. With a 2.5 tonne Jayco caravan hanging off the back, we hit the highways and the back roads to see how this Ram EcoDiesel fares as a tow rig. In particular, we're looking to see how frugal this diesel power plant is. This 3 litre V6 turbo diesel definitely isn't as outright relaxed as something like a 6 or 7 litre turbo diesel. Naturally, it's about half the size. But it does a really good job of dragging this van along in a pretty relaxed way. I've got tow haul mode, that button pressed down there. That just changed the shift patterns on this 8-speed automatic, and it does a fantastic job, this gearbox, of choosing the right ratios, not getting too busy, jumping up and down. It lets the engine really lean on that torque curve, and it spends a lot of its time around 2,500 RPM. The best thing about this Ram is how relaxed it feels, and it's not really any kind of special trick or anything like that. It's big, it's heavy, and it's got this really long wheelbase, so you don't have any tail wagging the dog, which I think is very important. It makes you feel more confident and relaxed behind the wheel. Just pull onto the highway here now. So I've just planted it there. I'm doing 100 k's an hour, 2,500 RPM. It's still got more to accelerate as well, which I think is quite good. And just next to that tow haul button down here is the integrated electric brakes. And they're great, easy to use. You don't need an aftermarket one, which is nice, although the aftermarket ones these days are pretty good. However, you've got manual controls there, so you can apply the trailer brakes on their own if you can feel the car swaying around a little bit, and then you can dial up and down the gain, how hard those trailer brakes bite, to see how it feels for you. It'll vary between conditions, trailers, cars and everything, so you can get this dialed in perfectly. If you're just going to be towing a little bit here and there, this Ram is absolutely overkill, and $109,000 quite expensive. However, if you're towing full time, you're a grey nomad, you're doing the big lap for years on end, something like that, a young family towing, you've got room in the back here, and you're going to be spending a lot of time behind the wheel, dragging something heavy behind you, you'll really appreciate how relaxed this thing is after a few days behind the wheel. All you'd really need to add is maybe some extended mirrors, but this suspension is handling this kind of weight on the back beautifully, no issues at all. Running the numbers, our tow test saw a consumption figure of 17.05 litres per 100 k's. Considering a previous tow test with a Hemi powered Ram saw around 20 litres per 100, this is a solid improvement for the diesel, and it goes some way to alleviate that $5,000 premium. There are other things to consider, however, like fuel prices, servicing, AdBlue for the diesel engine, driving range, and how often you're going to tow. If you aren't towing much or not even towing at all, give the diesel a miss and pick the petrol. Enjoy the noise and enjoy the savings. That $5,000 will go a long way at the Bowser. If you do want to take this Ram off-road, you'll be happy to know that it's actually quite good, and probably better than many would give it credit for. Yes, it's big and long. Yes, it's heavy. The turning circle isn't terribly nimble, but the fundamentals are quite good. 218 mils of ground clearance is generally on par with most other four-wheel drive utes, and the low range reduction is pretty solid. And of course, if you do want to go harder, you can consider modifying it with a bit more clearance, more tires, all that sort of thing. We hope that answers your question about this Ram 1500, but let us know about any more in the comments below. Consider subscribing to our channel if you like this video, and hit that like button as well. And if you want to know about any future videos coming up, hit that bell notification while you're at it. And of course, check out the full review at caradvice.com.